I started noticing subtle changes in him: new cologne, late nights, and less laughter at home. It started so slowly that I almost convinced myself I was imagining it. He'd been my husband for 25 years. I knew the sound of his footsteps, the smell of his aftershave, the way his moods shifted with the seasons. But that year, something felt off. He began staying late at work. At first it was once a week, then twice, and then it became normal for him to come home after 10, smelling faintly of a new cologne I hadn't bought. I remember standing by the sink one night, rinsing out a coffee cup he'd left behind, and realizing it had been weeks since he'd actually sat down for dinner with me. "Long day?" I'd ask when he walked in, trying to sound casual. "Yeah, meetings ran late," he'd say, tossing his jacket over the chair without looking at me. No kiss, no warmth, just distance. I told myself he was tired, that we were both getting older, and maybe this was just what happened. Marriages cooled, routines replaced affection. But deep down, I felt the quiet ache of being invisible. Our conversations became shorter. His phone, once forgotten on the kitchen counter, now never left his pocket. He started paying more attention to his appearance. New shirts, a gym membership, whitening strips. I laughed it off when I noticed the first time. "Someone's having a midlife crisis," I joked, but my voice sounded thinner than I wanted it to. He smiled but didn't look up from his phone. "Just trying to stay healthy," he said. Healthy. Right. There were moments when I caught myself staring at him, trying to read his face like a map of the man I used to know. The one who used to hold my hand during movies. The one who'd text me in the middle of the day just to say he missed me. That man felt gone, replaced by someone who shared my house but not my life. The night it really hit me, we were watching TV. Or I was trying to. He sat beside me, scrolling on his phone, smiling at something on the screen. Not at me, not at anything we were sharing, just at someone else's world. "Who are you texting?" I asked. He didn't look up. "Just work stuff." I remember nodding, pretending to believe it, but I couldn't focus on the show after that. I just sat there, listening to the small sounds, the tapping of his fingers, the faint buzz of his phone, the silence between us that used to be filled with laughter. That night, when he fell asleep, I lay beside him, staring at the ceiling. I felt this hollow fear settle in my chest, like something important was slipping through my fingers, and I couldn't stop it. I wanted to ask him what was happening to us. I wanted to scream, to shake him, to make him see me again. But I didn't. Instead, I turned away, pulled the blanket tighter, and told myself tomorrow would be different. It wasn't. One evening over dinner, he told me the truth. He'd met someone younger and wanted a fresh start. It was a Thursday. I remember that because I'd made his favorite: baked salmon with lemon butter and roasted potatoes. The kind of meal I used to cook when we were first married. I wanted to remind him, maybe remind us, of something good that used to be there. He walked in later than usual, looking nervous, I guess. His shirt wasn't tucked in right, and he didn't take off his jacket. He just stood there in the doorway like he didn't know whether to come in or turn around and leave. "Hey," I said softly. "You okay?" He looked at me for a long second, then said, "We need to talk." Those 4 words, I swear, they've ruined more lives than anything else. We sat at the table, but neither of us touched the food. He kept fiddling with his wedding ring, twisting it around like he was trying to loosen it. "I don't know how to say this," he started, staring at the table. "I didn't mean for it to happen. It just did." I felt my stomach twist. "What happened?" He exhaled, finally looking up. I met someone. For a second, the room went silent, like all the sounds in the world just stopped. I remember the clock ticking in the hallway, the smell of lemon and butter from the kitchen, and his voice, calm, too calm. She's younger, he added. It wasn't planned. I didn't go looking for it. I almost laughed. You met someone? Like, what does that mean exactly? You're seeing her, sleeping with her? He didn't answer right away, which was answer enough. When he finally spoke, he said, I care about her, and I think I want to see where it goes. That was the moment my heart broke. Not because he'd been unfaithful, but because of how easily he said it. Like he was discussing changing jobs or buying a new car. I stared at him, trying to process the words, but all I could think about were the years. The 25 years of shared mornings, birthdays, bills, hospital visits, laughter, fights, forgiveness, us. And now it all came down to her. How long? I managed to ask. About 6 months, he said. She makes me feel alive again. Alive again. That one stung. I stood up, walked to the sink and held onto the edge of the counter because my legs were shaking. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to hit him even. But instead, I just said, so I don't make you feel alive? He didn't answer. He didn't have to. After a long pause, he said, I don't want to hurt you, but I need to be honest. I think I want a fresh start. A fresh start. Like our life together had gone stale. Like I was something he could just wash off and start over from. I remember turning around slowly, looking at him, really looking at him, and realizing he was already gone. The man sitting across from me wasn't my husband anymore. He was a stranger rehearsing a goodbye. So I nodded. My voice barely came out when I said, then you should go. He blinked, maybe surprised at how calm I sounded. You mean now? Yes, now. And that was it. After 25 years, he picked up his keys, walked out the door, and left his half-eaten plate of salmon on the table. The food went cold before I could move. I looked around our house, the one we built together, and felt my whole life shrinking into memories. The first morning after he left, I woke up to silence. No sound of the shower running, no coffee brewing, no hum of the news on TV. Just quiet. The kind that presses against your chest and reminds you that something is missing. His side of the bed was cold, the pillow dented where his head had been the night before. For a long moment, I just sat there, staring at the empty space beside me. It's strange how quickly a life can shift. One day, you're part of a team, and the next, you're just alone. I tried to stick to my routine. I brewed coffee, watered the plants, opened the curtains. But everywhere I looked, he was there. His shoes by the door, his jacket on the hook, the dent in the couch cushion where he always sat. When you live with someone for 25 years, your lives intertwine in ways you don't even notice until they're gone. Suddenly, every object becomes a reminder. The mug he always used, the shirts I'd folded just days before, the toothbrush still next to mine in the holder. That evening, I opened the closet and started taking out his clothes. I thought maybe if I boxed them up, it would hurt less. But every time I picked something up, his old flannel, his favorite sweater, I'd catch a whiff of his scent and my throat would close. I ended up sitting on the floor, surrounded by piles of his things, sobbing into one of his shirts like some pathetic cliché. And I hated that. I hated how small I felt, how powerless. I kept asking myself how. How do you go from sharing a life, a bed, a future, to being disposable? How does a man you trusted with everything suddenly decide he wants to start over with someone who wasn't even there for half the story? The days blurred together. I went to work, came home, went through the motions. My friends tried to reach out, but I didn't know how to talk about it yet. What do you even say? My husband traded me in for someone younger? It sounds like a bad movie plot until it's your life. One night, I found our wedding album tucked away in the closet. I don't know why I opened it. Maybe I wanted to torture myself. Maybe I just needed proof that it had been real. There we were, younger, glowing, stupidly in love. I looked at his smile in those photos, the way he used to look at me like I was the only person in the world, and I couldn't help but wonder when exactly that stopped being true. I closed the album and sat there in the dim light, realizing something I hadn't before. I'd built my whole identity around being his wife. Every plan, every dream, every piece of who I was, it all tied back to us. And now there was no us, just me. The house felt like a museum, full of exhibits from a life that didn't exist anymore. I couldn't bring myself to eat at the dining table, so I started having dinner at the counter instead. I turned off our wedding song when it came up on shuffle. I began sleeping on my side of the bed only, leaving the other untouched. A quiet reminder that he chose to leave it empty. Somewhere in all that silence, a thought began to form. Soft at first, but growing louder every day. He might have left, but I was still here. And maybe, just maybe, that meant I could start over too. But on my terms. Instead of begging or screaming, I said something calm, something that made him realize what he'd just thrown away. He came back 2 weeks later. It was a Sunday afternoon, and I was in the backyard pulling weeds, something to keep my hands busy so my mind wouldn't wander. I heard the crunch of gravel on the driveway, looked up, and there he was, standing there like nothing had happened. He had that hesitant smile, the one he used to wear when he'd done something wrong and wanted to smooth it over with charm. But this wasn't about forgetting to take out the trash. "Hey," he said quietly, walking closer. I didn't stand up right away. I just looked at him. He looked thinner, tired. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was reality setting in. "I just wanted to check on you," he said, hands in his pockets. "See how you're doing." I wiped my hands on my jeans. "I'm fine." He nodded, like he was waiting for me to say something more. But I didn't. I'd said enough the night he left. After a few seconds, he sighed. "Look, I know you're hurt. I didn't mean to blindside you. I needed space to figure things out." That word again, space, as if what he'd done was some noble act of self-discovery. I stood up, looked him dead in the eye and said, "Did you figure it out?" He blinked, surprised. "What do you mean?" "I mean, did you figure out whether you prefer sleeping next to someone who doesn't know your history, who doesn't know how you like your coffee or how you snore when you've had too much wine? Did that make you feel alive?" He looked down, jaw tightening. "That's not fair." "No," I said calmly. "What's not fair is giving 25 years of your life to someone who decides one day it's not enough." He opened his mouth to say something, but I held up my hand. "Don't. I don't need an apology you don't mean." There was silence between us, the kind that hums in your ears. He finally said, "You don't understand. It's not about her. It's about me. I just wanted to feel young again." I finished for him. "Wanted to prove you could still get the attention of someone half your age." His face flushed. He looked smaller somehow, like the truth had taken the air out of him. I took a deep breath, steadied my voice, and said, "You think youth is something you can borrow from another person. It's not. You'll wake up one day next to her and realize you still have the same regrets, the same tired heart. Only now, you've got no one left who truly knows you." He didn't say a word, just stood there, hands shaking slightly. Then I added quietly, I loved you more than you'll ever understand, but I'm done teaching someone how to love me back. He looked up at me then, really looked, and I could see it in his eyes, that flicker of regret, that moment when he realized I wasn't angry anymore. I was finished. I turned away, picked up my gloves, and went back to pulling weeds. He stood there for another minute, then walked to his car. I didn't watch him leave this time. I didn't need to. When the sound of the engine faded, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Peace. Not happiness, not forgiveness. Just peace and silence. The kind that doesn't hurt anymore. But when I finally met her, I saw through the fantasy he'd built in his mind, and what she didn't know about him. I didn't plan to meet her. Honestly, I thought I'd go the rest of my life pretending she didn't exist. But life has a cruel sense of humor sometimes. It happened about a month after that last conversation. I was at the grocery store, of all places, standing in the cereal aisle debating between oatmeal and granola, when I heard someone call my husband's name. His first name, not his nickname. That caught my attention. I turned, and there she was. You know how sometimes you just know? Before anyone says anything, before your mind has time to catch up, your gut already understands. That was me in that moment. She was young, not a teenager, but young enough that I could have been her mother. Pretty in that effortless, shiny way that comes with youth, glossy hair, smooth skin, clothes that fit just right. She was holding her phone, scrolling, smiling at something. And then she looked up at me. For a moment, I think she was trying to place me too. I saw the flicker of recognition, the uncomfortable realization of who I was. You must be her, she said finally, her voice careful. I nodded. I guess I am. She hesitated, like she didn't know whether to apologize or walk away. I didn't mean to. I didn't want things to happen the way they did. I let out a soft laugh. Not cruel, just tired. No one ever does. She looked genuinely nervous. He said you two had been distant for years, that things were basically over. Did he? I said quietly. That's convenient. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't insult her. She wasn't the first young woman to believe a man's story about an unhappy marriage. But what struck me wasn't her. It was how familiar she looked. I saw a younger version of myself in her eyes. Naive, hopeful, believing in a man who promised the world. He talks about you, you know, she said softly. He said you're strong, that you'll be fine. Something inside me snapped, not in anger, but in clarity. He wasn't painting me as the villain. He was romanticizing his escape, making himself the brave man who left a cold marriage, not the coward who couldn't handle growing older. I looked at her and said, let me tell you something. He's charming. I'll give him that. He knows how to listen, how to make you feel like you're the only one who understands him. But when real life sets in, when you stop being a distraction and start being a responsibility, he'll look at you the same way he started looking at me. Like you're the reason he feels trapped. Her face paled a little. She tried to smile, but it trembled. That's not fair. You don't know how he feels with me. No, I said, but I know how he runs from things. And sooner or later, he'll run from you too. There was nothing else to say. I walked past her, left my half-full cart behind, and drove home with my hands shaking on the steering wheel. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat by the window, thinking about the girl at the store. I didn't hate her. In some twisted way, I pitied her. She didn't know that the man she thought was brave was just afraid. Of age, of time, of himself. And that's when it hit me. He hadn't left me because he wanted someone younger. He left because he couldn't stand being reminded of the life he'd wasted. For the first time since he left, I stopped crying over him. I realized I wasn't the one who'd lost something. He was. I started over from nothing, learning who I was without being his wife. It was harder and freer than I expected. The first few months without him were strange. Quiet, yes, but also disorienting. I'd wake up and reach for someone who wasn't there, cook too much food for one person, fold laundry and realize there was no one else's to fold. You'd think after 25 years a person would know how to be alone. But I didn't. I had to learn. I started small. I repainted the living room, something he'd always talked me out of. He liked neutral tones. I went for a deep, warm green. The first stroke of paint felt like rebellion. The second felt like healing. Then I took down the photos of us. Not out of bitterness, but because I needed to see my own reflection without his face beside it. I boxed them up carefully. Wedding photos, vacations, anniversaries. Every reminder of a life that once felt permanent. I didn't throw them away. I just put them aside, like a book I wasn't ready to reread. I started going for morning walks. It was strange how unfamiliar my own neighborhood felt without him beside me. I noticed things I'd never seen before. A new coffee shop on the corner. The neighbor's roses blooming again. Little details I'd missed because I'd spent so many years looking inward, keeping a marriage from falling apart. The first time I went out to dinner alone, I nearly turned around halfway there. Sitting by myself felt humiliating at first. But as I ate, I realized no one was staring at me. No one cared. The world kept moving. And for once, I didn't have to explain myself to anyone. I began to rediscover pieces of me that had been buried under we. I joined a pottery class. I reconnected with an old friend I'd lost touch with because he never liked her. I learned how to fix a leaky faucet, how to change a tire, how to enjoy my own company without filling the silence with TV or tears. But it wasn't all empowerment and self-discovery. There were nights when the loneliness hit hard, when I'd hear a song from our wedding or smell something that reminded me of him, and it would feel like I was starting all over again. I missed the version of him I fell in love with, the one who used to hold my hand while we grocery shopped, who'd bring me coffee in bed on Sundays. It took me a long time to accept that version of him didn't exist anymore, and maybe hadn't for years. One morning I found myself smiling for no reason. I was watering the plants and realized the air didn't feel heavy anymore. The grief had stopped being a storm and turned into something softer, a kind of peace. That day I looked in the mirror and thought, I like this woman. Not because she was perfect or put together, but because she'd survived something she thought would destroy her. I didn't need to be his wife anymore. I didn't even need to hate him. I just needed to keep choosing myself, one quiet, steady day at a time, and for the first time in years, that felt like enough. Months later, he showed up wanting to talk. What I told him that day left him speechless. It was early spring when he came back, almost a year since the night he left. The cherry blossoms had just started blooming, and I remember thinking how strange it was that something so beautiful could come right after such a long winter. I was in the kitchen making tea when I heard the knock. When I opened the door, there he was. Same man, different eyes. Tired, a little grayer around the edges, holding himself like someone who'd finally run out of excuses. Hi, he said quietly. I leaned against the doorframe, studying him. You lost? He gave a small, awkward smile. No, I just wanted to see you. I didn't invite him in right away. I just stood there, waiting for him to find his words. He looked nervous, like a man standing in front of the life he'd thrown away, realizing too late that he couldn't just pick it back up. She's gone, he finally said. The woman I was seeing, it didn't work out. I didn't flinch. I'm not surprised. He nodded, eyes down. You were right about everything. I thought she made me feel young again, but all I did was trade one kind of emptiness for another. I let the silence stretch between us. It wasn't bitter anymore, just honest. I've been thinking a lot, he went on, about what I had, about what I lost. I was stupid. I thought starting over would make me happy, but it just made me realize how good I had it. How good you were to me. I looked at him for a long moment, then said softly, "You didn't lose me, Tom. You gave me away." He blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" "You didn't trip and fall into another life. You made a choice. You chose to walk away from the woman who built a home with you, who knew your every flaw and still loved you. You didn't lose me. You threw me away because you thought something shinier would make you feel alive. And now you're here because reality caught up with you." He swallowed hard. "I made a mistake." "Yes," I said, "you did. But the difference between a mistake and a decision is that mistakes can be undone. You made a decision." He took a step closer. "I miss you. I miss us. I want to try again." For a second, I almost felt the old pull, the familiarity, the shared history. But then I thought about the woman I'd become since he left, stronger, calmer, standing on her own 2 feet. I wasn't the same person he walked out on. "I loved you for 25 years, I said quietly. "I don't regret that, but I can't spend the next 25 trying to forget why you left." He opened his mouth, then stopped. His eyes glistened, and for the first time, I saw the full weight of his regret. "I don't hate you," I added, "but I can't go back. I finally built a life where I'm not waiting to be chosen." He stood there for a long time, nodding slowly. Then he whispered, "I understand." I closed the door gently, not in anger, but in peace. And when I turned back toward the kitchen, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, lightness. He might have left me to chase youth, but I'd found something he never would, the quiet kind of freedom that comes from knowing you were enough all along.